The mountain snow is melting, and hikers all over Washington state are getting excited to take advantage of the mild summer weather that's coming. Tami Asars has spent many years hiking the Cascades and journaling her experiences in a series of popular guidebooks. The most recent book is called Day Hiking Mount Adams and the Goat Rocks Wilderness. You can meet Tami, you can see some incredible photos, and you can hear all about exploring the Wonderland Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and many other nearby locations this Friday night at 7 o'clock at the Mountaineers. The Mountaineers Seattle Program Center will have Tami, and there's also her book and this Be Wild event. All the information at bobrivers.com. Tami Asars, my neighbor, too. Welcome back to the Bob Rivers Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great. We were talking last night about your book and your hiking experiences, and I sort of thumbed through the book, and I have to tell people, first off, you have a wonderful writing style.
Thank you.
And it's
Thank
not
you
just
very
because you're a friend and I know you. And I would fake it if you weren't that good.
I like you, but this book is terrible.
Yeah. But it's also, as you talk about trails, you talk about the experience of being on the trail. You actually say things to people like how you'll feel on this trail as you explore and find things. And you take these pictures. And I got to say, I know from your picture taking, even of our bears and all the wildlife in our neighborhood, I don't know how you get such high quality pictures. It's an expensive camera, I'm sure, as part of it.
Yeah, it's a high end camera, but it's also a passion.
It's a passion of yours to And how do you
Yes.
catch these animals seemingly mugging for you?
I don't know, but I years ago in college when I was doing portraiture and taking pictures at weddings and of toddlers and things like that, it was fun, but it wasn't exactly, I guess, my passion. And so one of my professors at that time told me, take a camera and point it at something that you love, and you will get good results. And that was all he had to tell me.
There's a Zen thing that's happening there. Like, for example, in the beginning of your book, on page 16, there's a picture of a chipmunk. And I swear the chipmunk knows he's in a photo shoot.
Let me see.
This chipmunk is looking back at Cammy going, how do you like me?
What's up?
Looks like he's posing.
He's posing. That chipmunk is posing. Like, do you have 50 pictures of that chipmunk and that was the one?
No, that's a golden mantled ground squirrel, actually. And he
God,
just
Bob.
he went.
I called him a chipmunk. Didn't he sing on that Christmas classic?
Yes, he did. But yeah, so he just went running and just cruised on up a stump and stood there for a second looking at me, and it was just perfect timing.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to talk about the Mount Adams and Goat Rocks area. I don't know much about it because I sort of live, in our area, Snoqualmie Pass. There's so much to do. And then I've gone north a little bit, but this is to the south, right? And is this best accessed from Yakima?
South Cascades. Actually, there's several different places. Yakima is one of the places you can access it. Packwood, town of Trout Lake, down way south, down by Mount Adams. So there's several different locations, but it's a great place for people that want to take kind of a staycation, or when Memorial Day rolls around or Labor Day rolls around, and you just think, oh my gosh, where can I go where there's just not tons and tons of people? This is where you can go.
Okay, so you need this book, Mount Adams and Goat Rocks, and I had no idea. Well, first off, if you look at it, the pictures, the spectacular mountain views that you get are amongst the best in the entire state.
Yeah, some of the most spectacular trails we have in our state are found in this area. It is mind-boggling.
And it's less traveled than, say, the stuff that's really easy right next to the highway.
Yeah, in fact, what's crazy is that there are so many wonderful trails in this area that some of them just aren't even getting used. When I did my research for this book, I was down in this area and I was looking at lines on maps going, oh, geez, this looks like a fun trail. I think I'll follow this today. And I'd end up in a huckleberry patch because there hadn't been enough people on that trail, doing the most organic form of trail maintenance, which is boots on the
Boots keep the trail
Yeah.
and you would eat tons of bear. Let me ask this, because you're kind of crazy in a good way. You're a wild woman. How many 100 miles will you hike? Like, how many miles of trail did you hike to do this book?
Geez, it's hard to say exactly, but it was somewhere between 800 and 1,000.
800 and 1,000 miles.
Yeah, and that was over the course of spring, summer, and fall. I started very early.
So if you were a car, you've turned over the odometer hiking. You've done 100,000 miles.
I need a tune-up.
Yeah. Like if that's 1,000 miles in 1 year? or in a couple of years?
No, in 3 seasons. Spring,
3 seasons
yeah,
to get
spring,
ready
summer,
for a
and fall.
book.
Yeah.
So you've experienced all these trails.
Yes, I have. Every
Wow.
single one of them. Every
That's why
single-
you can just now. And this is a series of books. When I moved to this area, I think it was 1989. Who's this guy? His name was Spring. Was it Iris?
Iris Spring. Yeah,
And
Harvey Manning.
one of the first things I did is buy the Alpine Lakes Trail Book Guide.
yeah.
And you're basically the next generation continuing this series, right?
That's right. Yeah, those folks have passed on now, and so they were living legends in their day. And someone's got to kind of get up there and do the work and keep them current. And so I'm doing that as is my colleague Craig Romano, who is also a guidebook author, writing a lot of books in this area as well.
Okay. Now you say something in this book that's shocking to me. You know Lisa.
Yes.
And and you've taken her
Yes, I have.
to
And your
Eastern
sister.
Washington. Yeah, and my sister Patty. And the thing they're afraid of anytime they get to the desert, you know what it is?
Yeah, rattlesnakes.
Rattlesnakes.
I thought it was a one-star hotel.
Well, Lisa doesn't like those either.
I know my wife either.
Yeah, but you say something in the book that is kind of cool. You say rattlesnakes are polite in a way. They're gentlemen. Tell us why they're gentle.
Well, they're courteous enough to shake their tail and let you know they're there. They're on the diet of big birds of prey. So they're also, they're nervous about being eaten. And
So
they
we
don't-
shouldn't be afraid of a rattlesnake when you're hiking.
I would say cautious, but I wouldn't say fearful. Most of the time when I've seen them, they give you a tail shake and they scoot off the trail.
And then the other thing, and I never thought of from a rattlesnake's point of view, he's scared.
He's scared. Yeah,
Because
he
if
doesn't wanna
he's
be there.
out in the open where you might step on him, a big eagle could come down and make him dinner.
Yeah,
right?
he is vulnerable. Sure.
And are you saying that a rattlesnake will never bite you without shaking first?
I don't know exactly if that's
No
true.
guarantees, Bob.
No
It
guarantee.
says in the back of the book.
I want a guarantee in the book.
So it says golden ground squirrel / no
I
guarantee.
met an impolite rattlesnake.
Hello,
gentlemen.
One thing
Top of the head to you, sir.
one thing about rattlesnakes, and I think Tammy will agree, or I think this is the way it works from my fishing days, is early in the season they're much more dangerous because they can't get out of your way, or when it's early in the morning and it hasn't really warmed up yet. When
Yeah.
they're laying on a rock trying to get enough heat just to get going. If they can't move as fast, and that's when they're really dangerous.
That's when you don't want to step on.
Right.
Yeah, in the morning. Okay.
And rattlesnakes are just found over on the eastern side of the Cascade Crest primarily. So your odds of running into them somewhere, say down in Goat Rocks and Mount Adams, are pretty slim unless
There's
you're
still
hiking
some,
over.
okay.
Yeah, unless you're hiking over in Yakima. And there are some trails in the book in the Yakima area.
and do you
they're-
warn which ones in the
Yes.
book? Okay.
Yes.
Is there a little rattle next to that
Yeah,
trailhead? Is a little kind of key I can look at as a novice hiker?
In 1,000 miles of walking this area, how many bears do you come across?
Ah, she's the bear whisperer. And
Yeah,
Tammy
yeah.
has more pictures of bears. In fact, would you do us a favor for our website?
Yeah.
Would you send us a couple of really cool bear pictures?
you bet.
And we'll
You-
post them
you
with the
bet.
book. Okay, so
Get that one of the jaws coming open just about 6 inches from your face. That was my favorite.
this bear was posing.
Yeah, we call you bear bait behind your back.
What's interesting about bears is they're the most docile creatures. We have this predator prey fear response to them, but they really are gentle giants. They are. And I had a fantastic experience. I ran into quite a few bears this summer, but the most fantastic experience I had while writing this book was I was bushwhacking my way down a trail that was seldomly used, and I ended up in an old snag forest. It was a really hard hike. It was a hot day, and I was on the side of this mountain filled with wildflowers and dwarf huckleberries. It was rather late in the season. And I popped over the top of this ridge, and I looked down into this meadow, which wasn't very far below me, and there was this big, beautiful, healthy black bear eating these dwarf huckleberries. And that moment for me was so surreal because I had worked so hard to get there and looking and getting that reward. So I plopped down right where I was, and anybody that knows me knows the first thing I would normally do is whip out that camera, and start taking
you
photos.
would turn Japanese immediately. Yeah.
And so I didn't do that because I just had, it was sort of this amazing sort of Zen moment, and it was a really peaceful thing, and I didn't want to scare him and I didn't want to disturb him. So I plopped down right where I was, as quiet as I could be, and I watched. And for me, that, those are the highlights. Those are the things that I get to experience sometimes when I'm out there that are really the reward for all of the hard effort to get to these places. And sometimes, the unnervingness of being out there on these really remote trails alone
Plus,
occasionally.
huckleberries are the perfect appetizer for a meal of cute blonde hiker.
First the fruit, then the meat.
First, the meat, yeah, of course.
I asked
What-
her, bears are omnivorous, of course.
Yes. Mhm.
Because they will eat meat. They eat salmon, but they also love berries.
Yep.
And then now we're in the midst of the salmonberry season, right?
Yep, that's
so
right,
that's
yeah.
their two favorite foods. I wonder if they know.
And blackberries coming up here too. Yeah.
Okay. There is much more in the book. You can pick out all kinds of cool hikes. We're going to do Goat Rocks this
Yes, we
year.
are,
We have it
yes.
scheduled. Many other tips too. Things that that you would want to know, like how can a human being with no internet connection? And by the way, I have to warn you, some of these hikes you will not be able to tweet or Facebook post while you're there.
Oh, no.
But you have a little blurb in the book about how we can sense when a storm is coming. And is this us turning on our instincts that animals have that we don't think about very often?
Absolutely.
Give me
That's
a
all
little
it
bit
is.
about that.
Well, I mean, there's things like, is a pine cone flexible? If a pine cone is flexible, it means there's lots of humidity in the air, which means that it's probably going to rain or it has rained recently. And you can kind of tell is that, if that pine cone's not dry, you're in a very moist climate, you should be prepared for that. Sometimes right before a rain, there's a woody smell that comes down that's really strong and you can almost taste it. It's so strong. Right before a big gust of wind, you'll taste this really strange woody
And
smell.
then the little gust of wind means the weather's changing too.
Sometimes, yeah. And so it's really interesting. If you stop and just listen to your senses and pay a little bit of attention to your surroundings, you can be your own Jeff Renner.
And what channel's all this on so I can watch from home?
It's on her book, Day
Oh.
Hiking Mount Adams and Goat Rocks. I'm going to highly recommend it. And then, and the last question is, you meet many people with your thousands of miles of hiking who are, shall we say, interesting, different. Some occasionally some weird old people that are like it's on their bucket list to do the Pacific Crest Trail or whatever,
Yep,
right?
yeah.
Just tell me one of the strangest experiences you've had. And do these people frighten you sometimes, or are they all just harmless weirdos?
Oh, no, I've met some salt of the earth people. Salt of the earth weirdos, too, actually.
Yeah.
Just really cool
Thank you.
people.
How about that? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, but they're really fantastic. One of the people I met actually was I was doing an interview at the same time I was doing research for the book. I was writing an article for Washington Trails magazine on Sasquatch, on Bigfoot, and so I had the opportunity to interview a gentleman who is with the Washington State Sasquatch research team, and so
There is a real research team.
there is, and so they are boots on the ground out there looking for the Bigfoot.
Come on.
Oh yeah, and they really 100% believe in this. And so part of my job was to talk to him and understand a little bit more of why they believe that this creature is real. And so he would tell me things, and I would, I'm a skeptic, so I'd ask questions like, well, if there is a Sasquatch, well, why hasn't there been a carcass found? And he'd say things like, well,
Quiet down, you. Just shut your pretty mouth. You just shut up.
he'd say, well, how many times have you come across a bear carcass? And well, that's
That's
a good
true,
point.
not very often.
Good point,
Yeah.
right? And then I would say, all right,
Touche.
so have you taken any consideration that some of these people may be making up these stories as a means to sort of get attention? And he would say, okay, so say 90% of them are fake. That still leaves 10% to question what they saw. Okay, good
It's hard to
point.
prove a negative.
Yeah, and so he would tell me these things, and then he started telling me how Sasquatch is often much kinder to females, but they can be very protective and territorial if you're in their way. And he said you'll know because they will throw pine cones and rocks at your head and try to get you out of their turf. And so the very next
And then you
day,
will lift up the pine cone and say, "Storm is a
Storm
coming."
is coming.
Right.
It's wow.
Yeah, so the next day I was out on a trail, and I was heading up in this really remote area, completely alone by myself, with this still sort of strange Sasquatch interview playing on repeat in my head when a pine cone comes sailing out of nowhere and hits me square in the noggin, and I just stood there going, seriously,
Yes,
Really?
seriously.
That's funny. Well, I'll tell you what. When you see Sasquatch, if you get a nice,
Over the shoulder,
boudoir
looking
pose like
back,
this
yeah.
golden mantled ground squirrel from him.
Yes.
That's got to be the most famous photograph.
Tammy,
you
I
ever
will
took.
tell you something as well. When you see Sasquatch, you must immediately go back to your car because you're having some sort of episode. Yeah. Sasquatch is not real.
That's the mushrooms from earlier.
Yes, that's correct.
You describe other things in the book, of course, all the trails. You describe an elk and the sound an elk makes, and I never knew the sound that an elk makes is the bugle, right?
Yeah. You're pointing at me as if I'm going to make it.
Yes. Now.
No,
on
Spike will
command.
do it. No, it's not that.
That's the Grinch.
Pedro,
I'm sorry, my bad.
Google elk bugle.
Yeah, it's a really interesting sound, and when you first hear it, it's a little alarming if you're not familiar with it. It's like it's not a marmot. What is it? Because it's high and shrieky.
No, it's not that. But here's the thing: a lot of people are afraid of elk because they're so big,
freaking
but really
massive.
also they're kind of timid too.
They are. I mean, they're hunted. And in fact, there's quite a few hunters in the wilderness areas. Just FYI, if you're out there hiking in the fall, good to know, wear orange because these areas, everything except a national park is open for hunting. And you will run into a lot of hunters and things out
So
there.
the antler hat's a bad idea?
Bad idea.
Yeah.
Really bad idea.
So
Unless-
the elk, like you run across an elk and he'll sort of start to come at you, but then when he realizes what you are, he doesn't, he does not know any interest in you.
I don't think they have interest in you anyway. I think it's just more of a knee-jerk instinctual reaction like, oh, there's something I wasn't expecting, and it'll kind of, occasionally they'll snort and stomp, but normally they just run off.
We've covered just about every animal, so I've got to know the most predatory animal in our forest, the one that is really made to kill, and I know it avoids humans too, but the cougar. Have you seen many cougar out there when you're hiking around?
So fun cougar stories. So I had at least maybe three or four trail experiences where I had gone on trails and on my way back had cougar prints over my prints. Or there was one, it was ironically called the Wildcat Trail, and I found a nice big fat cougar print on it too. But another neat story is there was a gentleman I met in Yakima when I was hiking. He's 81 years old, and he hikes religiously. In fact, he runs a hiking club, and so I had gone up to a place called Russell Ridge off US 12 with him, and he was in front, and he saw something, and he said, pointed to me, and he said, "Do you have your camera?" He was motioning to me. I said, "Yeah." He's go ahead, go ahead. So I went around him, and I went down the trail, and I was looking where he was looking, and I didn't see anything, and not a stick breaking, nothing. And so I turned around and I said, "Herb, what'd you see?" And he says, "Oh, I saw a doe. I think it was a doe. I'm not sure. It was tan." And so I sat there looking around, didn't see a doe, and I thought, must have been something. I don't know who knows what he saw. Took two more steps and saw big, huge cougar prints that had gone into the brush. So had I been just a couple seconds earlier, I wouldn't have been able to, capture that.
And we've seen pictures of the ones that live in our area on game cameras, and they're huge. They can be 200 pounds. And yet, they're not, they don't attack humans generally.
No, I mean, they, if they wanted to attack people, they've got the smorgasbord of Mount Si. They could easily go
They can pick us off easily.
rotating sushi belt there. But they don't. They're not really interested in that. It's not their, it's just not in their nature so much.
I had an interesting cougar encounter. I was in the 7th grade, Herring Run Middle School, Mrs. Yablonsky, fine woman.
Who had the pool?
Right.
This is the elk
Thank
that
you,
you
we're
wanted to
all
hear.
Here's the elk. Listen. Yikes.
Yeah,
Damn.
That's the sound?
that's the sound. That's the very sound.
That's an elk bugling. Day hiking Mount Adams and Goat Rocks. We'll have a link at bobrivers.com. These new hiking books are fantastic. You're working on more,
Thank you.
too, right?
Yes, I am.
All right. The last one was
Hiking around Mount Rainier's Wonderland Trail, which
Wonderland
is a
Trail.
93-mile loop trail. The book's called Hiking the Wonderland Trail.
it's 9:36. We'll be right back. That is Tami Asars, ladies and gentlemen.